James, welcome to the show.
Hello, mate. How are you? You're good. You look radiant and beautiful as always. Yeah, I like your headband.
It's a headband. That's what it is.
Yeah, it is.
Pay a lot of money for these.
You do.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll start a side business.
Um,
bands.
James, because I just haven't had a guest on here in a while, and I feel like I'm excited to, and I just want to jump in and chat and just pretend we're not even filming for YouTube and just chat. But some people might not know who you are because we got similar audiences, but we also have audiences who don't overlap at all. So introduce yourself for the crew before we start.
My name is James. It is James Martin, not the famous chef. Serious time. So for anybody that doesn't know me, my name is James Martin. I don't know why I said it like that. Most people, if they do know me, will probably know me by Made by James. That's the kind of social, personal brand that's kind of happened through effort and fluke, the combination of a bit of those two things. So I'm own a design agency called Baby Giant Design in the UK, and I've now niched down into the brand identity world, so focusing on logo design and packaging and all the other bits and pieces that go with brand identity. And on the side of that, kind of trying to I'm trying to figure out my new mission at the moment. It's kind of like building conversations for clients as well as building up the creative people's confidence. That's kind of where I'm jazzing right now. It'll probably change tomorrow, but that just came out my mouth, so it made sense.
And you didn't mention really much about teaching. You teach this stuff now too.
Well, teaching is a funny old thing. I don't want to become a coach necessarily, especially not yet. I've still got a lot to learn myself. But I definitely, my sole purpose here is to leave impact in the design world, and that is visually. Ultimately, I want to be a good designer that helps other creatives rather than a great coach that does some design. That's not really my kind of thing. I think to be a good coach or creative coach, you've got to be in the trenches with people. I think, especially in the design, like logo world, it's ever moving. So many different people saying all sorts of different things. I just try and leave an honest point of view, an honest voice there. But, I was teaching before I was a designer. I went and taught art. I got a PGCE, I think that's the right thing. It's like a year's teaching certificate. Got that when I was at uni, did a year's course there, and that I went and taught for a year at my old school for art. So teaching's always kind of been there. I just don't think it was ever the right time. I was like 20 years old teaching 13-year-olds, and that gap's a little bit too close, because I was still basically 13 when I was 20. I think now I'm definitely kind of leaning. I don't even want to call it coaching. I think it's just kind of guiding. I've just bought a course out, but it's very much just like me in the office chatting about how I do stuff and how I feel about stuff, rather than you do this or you do that. It's very much a guide more than, just show people how I do it, and if you vibe with it, jump on. If you don't, that's fine. So,
well, I think, like you said, the thing about not you were 20 and they were 13 or whatever, but I think there's something to be said about like being in the trenches, like you mentioned, with the people that you're trying to help, and being also knowing that you still have stuff to learn, and knowing that you're not the person that people need to learn from. Like, it makes you more approachable, and it makes people vibe with what you're talking about more than somebody who's unreachable and who's reached this like status that
very much so. And there's a lot of experts, as you'll know, on social media. Some of those experts have been doing it for 3 months, so it's an exciting space. Social media, I think that's mainly I'm happy I don't, without being an absolute twat, I don't have to do a course. I don't have to do some coaching, but I feel that there's, without coming across as anything crazy, I think there's space for some real talk about the industry. I've been in it for 17 years. I was in it before people were on social media, or even social media was even a thing. Do you know what I mean? So, I think it's difficult because it's tough to know who to listen to. It's tough to know what's the right information, what's the wrong information. And, I think because, you're probably the same. I was told you'll never make any money out of creativity. It's more of a hobby thing, go and get a proper job and then draw on the weekends or be creative on the weekends. It wasn't really pushed at school when I was growing up. So, but the problem with that is fast forward 25, 30 years, it's now probably one of the most in-demand jobs on the planet, the creative brains. And the issues that come with that is a lot of people trying to scam people, a lot of people trying to take shortcuts. Do you know what I mean? People might look at, Made by James and go, oh my God, he's got so many followers and he's always busy. And I'm like, yeah, but for 15 years, I wasn't. Do you know what I mean? It's only over the last 4, 5, 6 where I've really tried to kind of push myself that's kind of got easier. And, still running an agency is tough. Do you know what I mean? So I think everybody's a bit kind of get rich quick, but that's also good for all the people that are in it for the right reasons, because in a couple of years, they'll all piss off somewhere and we can all get on with being creative and crying in the corner of our room every now and again. We're trying to figure out a logo.
Oh, two questions are coming up. Let's see if they stick in my mind, because as you're saying them, I should be writing them down. But
yeah,
one is what would be your advice for people? Because there's a line between, like you said that you've been doing it for 15, 17 years, and now you're successful, but for 15 you weren't.
Mm-hmm.
So but there's a line between when you're new and you're sharing what you're doing in a way that makes it seem like you know what you're doing in order to get clients. Do you know what I mean? You don't want to go on there and be like, oh, I don't really know what I'm doing, but hire me anyway. Kind of. You have to be able to present yourself in a way that you know enough to be hired, but you also don't want to present yourself in a way that makes you seem like a quack, or makes or feels disingenuous. So for somebody who's, let's say, been doing it for a year or two and is just starting to get clients, what's your advice for people for posting in a way that seems genuine, but will also be trustworthy for clients? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I totally get that. Yeah, I mean, it is tough. Don't get me wrong. It is a tough place, but I think, it kind of works both ways, because what's happening is, I'll try and kind of jerk round to the question if I remember it too. But it's the idea of, the problem is there are young, not always young, but I don't like to generalize too much, so I don't think that's right. But
fresh.
There are a lot of fresh people, like you say, in the industry, 6 months in, a year in, talking a big game and taking clients' money and totally fucking it up. The problem with that is giving experienced designers, or designers who can do that job, a bit of a challenge, because the amount of people that come to me and say, I've wasted money on 3 designers already, and good money, because they said that they could do it, but they can't, that is also harming our industry. So yes, they might make a quick buck, but what they're actually doing is, they're never going to get work again. They're never going to get referrals again from that client. So I think there is, I was always taught, you start at the bottom and work your way up. The problem is nobody's willing to start at the bottom anymore. There's people just kind of jumping straight in, doing a course on logo design, doing a course on brand strategy, taking all the ideas and then running with it, which is great. Don't get me wrong. We've all got to start somewhere. But I think what needs to happen, I don't know what needs to happen, because I understand people need to make money, but I think what it is, I truly believe that being honest is, because you can be talented and you can be very good and still fresh, but you can also be 20 years in an absolute dog poop. Do you know what I mean? So there is, I mean, time in the industry doesn't necessarily equate to quality of work. I mean, I'll tell you that right now. That's true. But I think what is needed is a little bit of, because I speak to clients and they don't even like have calls with these people that they're working with. They hide behind an email. You can see on these, on like design inspiration or logo inspiration accounts, they are, sharing other people's designs and saying, DM me for work. So they're getting the traffic by sharing mine and other designers' work, yet saying, I'll do that. I'll do your logo for you. And there's two ways. Obviously, a client should do more research and a little bit more background checking to figure out, because that's clearly a scam. It's so obvious, it's not even funny, but some people don't look for that. Do you know what I mean? So, and kind of, like I said, circle jerking too far around here. But I suppose the thing is, like, I truly believe, like, being honest about where you are. If you're talented and you've got great work, share it. Yeah, but there's nothing wrong with saying, I'm only a year in, or I'm only 2 years in, or I'm only 6 months in. Your work will sell itself. Just because you're telling people honestly where you are, in the world, it's not going to stop you from getting work, I don't think, or not the work that you think. Yes, I know what people say. Well, if I say, oh, do you know what I mean? If I say I've only been in it for a year, this big client won't give me all their money. And like, well, that's probably right. But are you the person to do that job also? And I think people have got to have an honest chat with themselves, because like I said, like, people are being let down left, right, and center. And that is damaging. That is why, like, Fiverr, and all these other places are around, because people are thinking, well, if I can just chuck $5 or $50 at something, if it's great. If it's not, no worries. And that's what's happening, is like people are just getting let down so often that they're starting to not trust the design world or people online who are trustworthy. So I think, be honest. There you go. Maybe.
I suppose you could also just not say anything about how experienced you are. Like, I think one of the more annoying things about people who are coming off disingenuous is because they're saying things that that they can't back up. Like, it's almost lying, but it's like just towing the line between telling the truth and lying, so that it sounds like it's pumping you up. But an experienced designer would look at it and be like, yeah, but have you actually had any clients? Or yeah, but have you actually made money, kind of thing.
Yeah. But I think there's also, like, just to flip that conversation a bit, I think flexing, I mean, I did a post about it the other day. I think the problem is, as well, there's the new designers coming through can only learn from the people who they're looking up to, or kind of, looking at and seeing what they're doing. And, I do some quite honest posts about pricing, and I started like, at free, like 80 quid. And the problem is, there's like a lot of designers now who have been in it for a while flexing about, you should charge 10K for a logo because you're worth it. And I'm like, that is so, I mean, that devalues other people's journeys. That has no respect for what part of the world they're in, or what stage they're at their career, or whatever it is. And these people are pretending that they've always earned 10K for a logo, sitting around with their badges out, kind of going, look, check me out, or, flinging their cock around, kind of like, look at me, I'm the big all I am. But I guarantee that person messed up and undervalued themselves as a creative, and charged not enough money in the early stages. Yes, now they are. Good on you. That's great for you. But don't go around the internet telling everybody in a blanket message you should charge 10K, because it's bollocks. Do you know what I mean? It's
Are
absolute
we
bollocks.
about to get into pricing? Because we can get into pricing.
Oh, I don't want to get into pricing. It does my fucking head in. But you know what I mean? But I think the problem is it's like it's the environment, isn't it? Social media is tough anyway, and everybody's jostling for, kind of room, and sometimes, I always like to think that the creative industry is a nice, caring, and giving space, but there is a dark side to it as well, where people are bitchy and backstabbing and don't share enough, I think. And and like I said, that's a prime example of the flexing. It's kind of like, you should charge 10k. Okay, that's great. What do they get for 10k? How
Well, and
long
like
have you
you
been?
said earlier, does the output actually match what you're charging? I feel like that's a
Exactly.
piece. Like whenever I teach pricing stuff, I have an actual webinar where I talk to people about confidence in pricing. And one of the main caveats, and I've got this big slide that says like disclaimer, I can teach you how to be confident in your pricing, but unless what you're actually providing matches what you're pricing and what you're confident in your pricing, your confidence is going to go down because the client's not going to be happy and you're not going to get hired again. And it's this cycle. So you have to find like where the confidence matches the actual skill set. And that's like, that's the same rule for you as it is for somebody who's been in it for 6 months,
Exactly. Yeah, it's exactly that. And there's also like, but there's also things like process. What I might do in a day, somebody else might take 3 weeks to do. Do you know what I mean? So we should both charge 10k. I don't think so. Do you know what I mean? Like, and it's also like your target. I mean, who are you trying? There are so many. I mean, we're going to talk about it now, aren't we? Bloody pricing, fucking hate it. But I think, people have different. Target. Yes, you are creative. Yes, you are worth money. Yes, your time is valuable, and you have a gift. But it's up to you to understand. If you're charging 10k and doing 2 projects a year, you're not making enough fucking money, mate. Do you know what I mean? But if you're kind of in like that, maybe 3 to 4 to 5 and doing 50, 60, 70 projects a year, do you know what I mean? Which one do you want to be? Do you want to be the guy who flexes 10k or the guy that's got money in the bank? Do you know what I mean? So I think it's really tough. You've got to understand your audience. You've got to understand what your client's willing to pay. You've got to understand what you want to offer. It's a tough sell to say, yeah, one logo, no revisions, one option, 10k. Not many people are going to go with that. But if you chuck in a bit of brand strategy, you may be helping them with some font directions and some color choices, and you're building some social stuff for them as well. You can start to add a bit of animation. You can start to understand how that money can be reached. But it's just this blanket message, propaganda, art, you shouldn't be free. I mean, I love that's another one I love. Is I don't do free work. I'm like, fuck off. I've done shitloads of free work. As long as it's my choice, I don't care. If a charity comes to me, sorry, I just realized I'm swearing a lot, but that happens. It's because you mentioned pricing. That's why I'm swearing. But like people, like all these youngsters, they've read somewhere that you shouldn't do free work because it devalues the industry and you're worth more than that, girlfriend. Do you know what I mean? I'm like, Jesus, I did free work 10 years ago and it's equated to about 100 grand from one client over the last decade.
Yeah, the thing people don't understand about free work is that there's a time and place for it. Like I think a lot of beginners come in and they think that they have to do free work for their friends or for their family or for whoever just to get exposure, or they feel like they have to cave to people asking for free work because they're new. That's the problem, I feel.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, if somebody comes to you and says, I can give you exposure if you do this for free, you should say no straight away, But if somebody comes to you and there's a project and I like to think we are creative people and there are creative ways to make money. Money isn't always also the only form of money. You can barter. The amount of times where somebody hasn't got a budget, but I've just got free coffee for a year. Do you know what I mean?
And if that's what
it works for me, it works for them. And also now they do have money, they pay me to do stuff. Do you know what I mean? So I'm doubly winning. I'm high on caffeine and I'm getting paid. So,
it's a gamble because sometimes that works out, sometimes it doesn't. But if you use if you just use a little bit of a business brain and try and think of like what's the actual benefit to this thing,
Yeah.
that's different. It's like if McDonald's came to you and said, "Can you do this lettering for us?" You know they have a budget. They could pay you a
Yeah.
ton of money to do it, but they're like, "Oh, we'll give you exposure." You gotta think like, okay, but the people that are following McDonald's are not following for a letterer.
Mm.
They're not gonna give a shit who did the lettering for that. That's not gonna actually get me exposure. Sure,
No.
might work in front of a billion people, but none of them are gonna click on my name, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I think as long as you, I think it's, my theory is it's always got to be my choice. Do you know what I mean? Free work is my choice. So somebody comes to me with the right project, and especially when it's like either educational, it's doing good. There are times where I like to do at least maybe one or two a year, which are pro bono, just because I can give my talent to somebody else, which will help them help other people. Do you know what I mean? Obviously the process is pretty stripped back, but they get something that they can use to help other people. But if somebody comes to me like we've just chatted about and says, can you do this for free? If that is the opening gambit, I'm like, it doesn't really work like that, unfortunately. I wish you all the best, and you might find somebody that will do it, but like I said, I always go with my gut, and I think you've got to trust you. That needs to say that your business mind, and this kind of gets kind of nurtured the longer you are in it. Sometimes you get a vibe and it says, you should do this for free. I've had people who have offered, they are willing to pay for the project. And I've gone, this one's on me. Do you know what I mean? Because what you're doing is way more important than me making an extra buck here. So you do your thing with this, and that stuff, when you chuck it out into the universe, that comes back. So I think, free work has to be your choice ultimately. And, it can be a great way to make, long con, we talk about like the bigger picture, it's not all about now. We've got 40 plus years in the industry, if we're lucky. So you don't have to be smashing it year two. And I think that's the other thing, isn't it? When we talk about careers, everybody wants to make it year 1, 2, 3, and over a 40-year career, I mean, that is bonkers when you kind of break it down and look at it. Why should you be an expert at year 3? I mean, how can you be an expert at year 3? So yeah, interesting. Yeah. Let's not talk about pricing anymore.
Literally about to say, okay, one more pricing topic.
Yeah, let's do that.
Because as we're talking about free, the other big kind of question and controversy that you see is about discounting. And I'm curious if your philosophy is the same as mine on discounting. So someone comes to you and says, can you do this job? I know you usually charge 10,000, but I can only pay you 5,000.
Mm-hmm.
Or they just say, you give them a quote, they weren't expecting 10,000 and they go, oh, I can't afford that. Can we do it for less?
Yeah, I no discounts basically is my vibe. And the only reason I've worked very hard to get to a place where I am comfortable. I'm not even comfortable charging what I charge, but people say yes to it. Do you know what I mean? So I know not everybody says yes to it. Maybe like 30 to 40% of people say yes to it. So I'm kind of happy with that. Because if everybody's saying yes, then I'm too cheap. If everybody's saying no, I'm too expensive. So yeah, I like to be, I know that's something you're keen on as well, around that 30 to 40% mark. But saying no to, for example, that 5K allows me to free up my time for the other people who can afford me. But I understand. I mean, we're only talking 5, 10K just because we're talking about it. But, I think as soon as you discount, I think you've got to hold firm. That's what I'm trying to say. You've got to hold firm because you've worked very hard. Well, hopefully you've worked very hard to get to the place where, you understand the value you can bring. You understand the quality of work you can do. You understand what that work can do for that client. I get the giggles sometimes when a client will come to me and we'll be talking on the phone or whatever, having a little chat over email. And I'm kind of talking about budgets and, where they are. And I'm like, so, what are you looking to kind of turn over in the next 3 years, say? And they're like, oh, yeah, probably looking to hit 1.5, 2 million in the next 3 years. I'm like, great. So what's the budget for this work? And they're like $500. And I'm like, get a grip, mate. Do you know what I mean? Get a grip, so I think that's, but that's a slightly different conversation, which I always find quite funny. But I think the importance is obviously understanding the value as you have as an individual, not just your work, but what you can bring to the table as well. So to answer your question, no discounts, because I feel that aligns. I haven't worked so hard to go back to a price that I was doing 2 years ago, just to get the work. I prefer not to have the work and work on my personal brand or on a side project or on building a font, or I prefer to use that time in another way rather than devaluing myself, for that project. So is that the same for you?
Yeah, but my follow-up piece to that is, so what if it's the same? What if the same client is emailing you, you're like, you've gone back and forth a few times, you absolutely love this person, you love what they're doing.
Yeah.
They can't afford your 10,000. They say they can pay you 5,000. You really want to do the job, but you don't want to discount it.
Okay. So then what I would do is I would figure out a way it could work, possibly. So you could change this. Obviously, at 10,000, the scope of that project has a lot of deliverables in it. Is there a way we can get close? Is there a way that, okay, you've got 5, but you've got a really decent business. How about I have a chunk of it? I've done that before, which has worked out pretty well. Sorry.
So that's a new one. I haven't heard that option.
Yeah, I've worked for rather than at a specific rate, but for 15% of the company before. And I've done that twice and it's worked out pretty well.
I guess that works really well if you just become kind of their branding.
That's the thing. Yeah, I mean,
I would offer, because it's like, oh, I did your calligraphy. Now I own part of your business. Doesn't really work, but for designers and for branding,
yeah, it does. Because there's obviously constant work that is needed and constant involvement. And obviously with the agency, we can do websites, we can do animation, we can basically cover every single base. But there obviously has to be rules and it has to be done legally. That's not just like, oh yeah, mate, have 15%. When we sell, I'll promise I'll give it to you. It has to be all done,
yeah.
paper trail, properly, legally, and all that kind of sizzle. But the problem is, I think, to answer your question again, I mean, it is a tough one. If I really, really like them and they've got half the money, I don't know. I think still deep down, I would probably try and figure out a way to make it work, but I would try and get myself to that 10K still somehow. And I said that maybe doesn't necessarily have to be money, depending on the products that they're doing. Like I said, if I've said 10K for X and you've got 5K, well, I'll go, well, for 5K, I can only do this. I think this will still help. Ultimately it's not going to work. Or, sometimes in other, I'm just thinking of all the things that I've done in the past before. I've done like 6-month payment plans. Do you know what I mean? So I said, right, you can't do 10K now, but can you do 10K over the next 6 months?
James, I was really hoping that you would just circle back to and say that you would do it for free if you really wanted to.
No, I didn't do that. So I didn't. No. But yeah,
that's when you could do something for free. If it's a lovely person, that it's going to be a client that's going to be worth your while to work with.
Yeah.
It'll come back to you and you really want to work with them, then you could do it for free.
I think to
answer, like you said, you asked if I agreed with your no discounting. I do agree with it. And it's because my choice on that is to either do it full price or free. There's no in between.
Got you. Yeah. No, that makes sense. But I think Yeah, I think it makes total sense. But I always also think there is always a deal to be made, that we talk about. Creative people do have to get better at business, 100%. And there is a way of making a deal. And, like you say, it could be, or like I said, it could be a percentage. You could be no money, but a percentage. You could partner with them on their business and take 10%. Do you know what I mean? You're not going to see any return of that. You got to think that that's a 3 to 5 to 10 year plan. Do you know what I mean? And you've got to risk losing it all because they could never make any money. But, it's that risk to reward factor. And I think, this is a big conversation, because does it always have to be a yes and a no? Can it be well, that is a no, but can we get to this yes? Is there a way that we can work to this kind of yes, where you're doing it over a prolonged period, but there's legal documents in place to kind of say, like, you can't just pay the first one and then sod off. There are ways that you can help people, because cash flow, especially for startups, is tough right at the beginning. So if you can spread that out for them, but you are in control, say what we're going to do is we're going to create, especially for like my industry, we're going to start here, and then every month we're going to create monthly stuff. So then you're also getting a good case study and you're building up a good rapport. And as they start to grow and make more money, that money can then come back, and then they can pay for your 10%. You put a number on that 10%. That's the important thing when you're first starting out. So obviously you have to grow, but I think the thing, a big thing that I'm noticing within a lot of creatives, or especially, I'm not going to say fresh creatives, I was going to say young again, but even like some quite seasoned creatives, like 15, 20 years in, it's the business side of creativity that is stopping them from getting to where they want, from getting them to where they want to be. So I think it's a really important thing to try and learn as much. You don't have to learn from other creatives. You can just learn from other business people. It doesn't have to be the creative industry. It can be anybody who's in business. Like, I learn a lot from you. I am watching you like a fat eagle, a fat bearded eagle. Because the way, I think you are spot on with the way, you nurture and you give. And that's why I surround myself with people like you as well. There are certain ways to go forward. There is my favorite one is, you got the kind of aggressive people online who are like, you're not this, you're not that. But as soon as they come to selling something, it's like, I've been where you've been, and their kind of personality switches as soon as they're trying to sell you something. And I can't be the only one who reads through that shit. Do you know what I mean? So I think, you have got to, when it comes to like your business and your kind of personal brand or whatever it is, you have to have a way to talk to people, and you have to have a way of doing business. And that, I think, that goes back to that openness and authenticity. The kind of more honest you can be. I've recently just landed a client, and this is like, you never know who's following you. You never know what's going on. This guy's followed me for like 8 years, never commented on a post. So he was kind of following me before, like kind of at the birth of Made by James, when I was starting to share a bit more logo stuff. He's been following me since way back then. And like I said, never interacted with me, never really commented on my posts, but was always there. I never knew he was there, but he was there. And he came back to me, and we've just signed off a project for big money. Do you know what I mean? He said, when I was ready, I knew I was going to come to you. So this is another thing. You never know who is watching you. Do you know what I mean? So you have got to be, as I think yourself as you can be, because there will be people who are watching you, from the sidelines. When they've got the right project for you, they're going to come knocking on your door. So you got to keep showing up. You got to keep I hate the word fucking hustle. You know, you got to keep working hard. You've got to keep putting effort in, because you never know that there's people watching you right now who in a year's time are going to jump on you as soon as they're ready. You know, some people just aren't quite ready yet. I don't know where I was going with that. But
You just touched on like 80 different things that we could have we could talk for another hour on each of the things. You got a
yeah,
good business plan.
we've been talking for an hour almost.
Much.
Yeah, sorry.
No, but really, we could pick up on any of those things. We'll have to have another one of these because
I'm ready for it. You know, I'm ready. Not now, obviously, but you know, tomorrow. So I like spending time with you. You're funny.
one of the things you said a minute ago was learning from people with good business brains. People,
Yeah.
you know, creatives need to improve their business brains a lot of the time. And you got a good one. So where can people learn from you?
Segue.
That was a good one. That was a good one.
That was a good one. That was a good one. And I enjoyed it. Appreciate it. So you can come and learn from me, Becca. The beautiful thing is now you can just type in "Made by James" into Google, and this shows up. So there's a book. I've got a book. I've got a course. But yeah, you can find it all through me. So yeah, Made by James on Instagram. I got my newsletter, so you can just go onto my website, themadeby.james.com. Meow. There's a cat behind you. So I wasn't just meowing at you, sorry. Although I know you'd appreciate that, a good meow. So yeah, and then yeah, just come and find me anywhere. Made by James. You know, I'm not big at pushing myself, to be fair. So if you want me, just come find me. I'm around. You know, so yeah, that's
James,
it.
Thanks for sharing your business brain with us.
It was a pleasure. It was a wonderful thing we've experienced, everybody. So
we'll probably turn off this recording and keep talking for another 45 minutes. But
okay, yeah, you can do that. Goodbye, everybody. I'm going to speak to Becca now.